ways, welfare programs, et cetera. And we're doing that, and we're cutting them permanently. We're cutting a $20 billion project that Schumer fought for 15 years to get, and I'm cutting the project. The project is going to be dead. It is pretty much dead right now.
Convicted felon Donald Trump is weaponizing infrastructure. He's politicizing our streets, our roads, our tunnels. And who's at risk? Not just Democrats, even though that's what Trump and the Republicans want. It's actually all Americans. I had the privilege of sitting down with former Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg and New Jersey Senator Andy Kim to talk about the very real dangers that are being posed by Trump when he is withholding funding, killing funding for these essential projects that are there to benefit all Americans, regardless of political party. And joining me now is former Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg and New Jersey Senator Andy Kim. It is a privilege, gentlemen, to be able to spend this time with you. This is a critically important conversation that perhaps is escaping some people's notice, but I bet you it's not escaping the notice of people in New Jersey and in New York. Senator Kim, could you please let our viewers know why this gateway tunnel, this Hudson Tunnel Gateway Project is so important?
Well, it's so important, not just to New Jersey and New York, but to the entire country. I mean, in fact, Secretary Duffy himself, who, by the way, is a constituent of mine in New Jersey, lives there with his family. He's someone who's said before how this is of national importance, that it is critical for our entire country. If something were to happen to the train line on the Northeast Corridor, it would devastate our nation's economy. But, within my own state, we're talking about a project that over the course of the next 20, 30 years could bring in $445 billion of economic benefit, help about 100,000 new jobs in the region. That's what we're talking about. And Trump is using these mob boss tactics to try to use this as a political chip to be able to engage in retribution and revenge. And I'll be honest with you, the people in New Jersey are disgusted by that action.
Yeah, and Secretary Pete, the Russell Vogt, who's running the OMB right now, he said that $18 billion is being withheld because of, quote, unconstitutional DEI principles. He's saying now that because the Democrats are to blame for the shutdown, which is a lie, that these essential reviews of grants cannot be done to ensure that there's compliance with the laws. I mean, there's really, in common parlance, it's extortion. He's basically saying, hey, Democrats, if you come back and you get the government to reopen, we're going to actually release the funding that is so critical for this project.
That's right. I mean, this is about political revenge. The president has been very clear about that. And the really dangerous thing is the revenge is on you. It's on ordinary Americans and commuters who depend on these tunnels. The president thinks he's getting revenge against, Chuck Schumer is the way he puts it when he says he's terminating this project. But this project wasn't for the benefit of some elected official. It was for the benefit of the hundreds of thousands of commuters who depend on that tunnel being in good shape between New York and New Jersey. And part of why we funded this, part of why we committed funding to make this one of the biggest transportation projects in modern American history is because of how nationally important it is. If those tunnels failed, and to be clear, they were never meant to go this long, even before the damage that they sustained from Superstorm Sandy. If those tunnels failed, you would feel the economic impact as far away as my house in Michigan. So it is clear that these political games, and as Senator Kim said, really mob boss tactics to try to get their way, are resulting in something that could be serious economic harm and even safety risk for people across the country. And of course, if you're a commuter counting on those tunnels, maybe you voted one way, maybe you voted the other way. Either way, you don't deserve to be treated this way by your president.
Secretary Buttigieg, you obviously, one of the crown jewels of the Biden administration was the Infrastructure and Jobs Act. And let's refresh people's recollection, right? $1.2 trillion to modernize and to rebuild America's infrastructure with a focus on surface transportation, ports and waterways, airports. I mean, new technology. And part of that money was earmarked, but already congressionally approved, right? This is money that is American taxpayer money that is now being withheld a la mob boss tactics because Trump and the Republicans want to punish the Democrats.
That's right. Look, this funding went through a careful process to decide what projects needed the most support. And by the way, we funded 70,000 projects in every corner of the country, red, blue, and purple. If you look at our key grant programs, which ones went to red states or blue states, is pretty much 50-50. Not anymore. Right now, you see the president directing funding to certain states or jurisdictions, withholding it or canceling it from others, not because of the need, but because of politics. It is the exactly what people hate about Washington and about these political games that are being played. And that extortion is really coming at the expense of people who would benefit from the real safety as well as economic improvements of these projects when they're done and before they're done. The workers, we're talking about building trades workers, they've done nothing wrong for sure, and they deserve better than to get screwed over by a president using this department as an instrument of revenge.
I want to jump in here just because hit a point, which is that, I am a U.S. senator for everyone in New Jersey, not just the people who voted for me. Pete was Secretary of Transportation for everybody in this country. We have to uphold that type of oath. And if our government and if our democracy moves in this direction where we're seeing, like Donald Trump, where he thinks that he's just president to the people who voted for him and that he has no obligations to those that didn't, that's such a dangerous path. I really do think that that type of patronage network is what's going to undermine our democracy. So I hope people see this, even if you're not in the New York, New Jersey area. This is something that if you take further, he could do anywhere, and any future president can do anywhere. And that's so dangerous. This one person, this one woman in New Jersey, who, by the way, was an independent voter, when I was talking to her about this, I asked her, is there anything you'd like me to say to Donald Trump? And she said, I would want to tell to him and remind him that this is our money. This is the American people's money. This is not Donald Trump's personal slush fund. This is meant to benefit the lives of Americans, all Americans, not just those that voted for the president.
Well, and Senator Kim, you've actually sat down with workers, with just everyday people. You went to a diner recently with Congressman Rob Menendez, and you sat down with two gentlemen, and we're going to provide a link to that video for others to watch. But during this conversation, they talked about how thousands of union workers are impacted. It's not just the end result of the hard work. It's the hard work that needs to be put in now. So it's not just impacting commuters and residents and all of the fabric, the infrastructure fabric of our United States. But this administration particularly has been a union busting administration. And this is just yet another layer of this administration going after the laborers and the workers, the people that are really just trying to make a living and to get by.
Well, and it shows so much disrespect for the work that they're doing. I mean, these people that I talked with, they're construction workers, people involved in different infrastructure projects, including the Gateway Tunnel. And for them, they just feel like they were pawns in this broader game, and that people like Donald Trump, they're just playing with other people's chips, not thinking about the livelihoods that they are destroying. Not to mention the fact that if you actually stop a construction project, how much more expensive it is to be able to start that back up. So just the fact that this is something that's just really everyone's losing. And in particular, I think it's important for the American people to see it in terms of the impact on people, whether it's about the Affordable Care Act and the fact that we're trying to get subsidies for Americans that are struggling with their healthcare. Well, look, the majority of subsidies are actually going to go to states that voted for Trump in terms of just the number of people that are benefiting from that. That's not my consideration. I'm just trying to help as many Americans as possible, not just those in blue or red states. And so, I hope that the American people see that this is about them. This is about helping them afford, costs right now when they're struggling within their family budget. And it's these mob boss tactics that are being used that are raising your costs left and right. Because again, Donald Trump's not interested in what the average family is going through. He's interested in those billionaires that were on stage with him during the inauguration. This can't be seen as just some tug of war between two political parties. This is about real lives that are at risk by what Donald Trump is doing.
Secretary Buttigieg, one thing that has become a hallmark of especially this particular Trump 2.0 term is the weaponization of all these various federal agencies. We see it happening with the Department of Justice. It's just excruciating to see what's happening to our judicial system. And now we're actually seeing the weaponization of the infrastructure of our country. Trump promised to be the retribution president, and yet this is one of the most egregious acts to take. He just announced on Sunday on Fox News, of course, no shocker there, that he's literally killing this project. It's not, let me just pause on the disbursements, which is what the independent commission has said is supposed to be happening here. He literally announced on Fox News that this Gateway Tunnel project is dead.
And the really tragic thing here is that he is hurting people of every stripe in this country. He's hurting Trump voters, he's hurting Democrat voters, and everybody in between. When we funded this project, it wasn't because we heard that this is going to be good for one party. It's because there is an urgent need. I remember touring these tunnels, seeing what had happened to them. They're approaching 100 years old. And again, you have hundreds of thousands of people who go through those tunnels every day. If they become unavailable, they have to be closed down for safety reasons, or worse, there's an emergency. Nobody directly impacted is going to be impacted because of how they voted or because of their politics. They're just Americans who deserve good infrastructure. We were there when Democrats and Republicans, including Andy Kim in the House, came together to put together the funding to get these bills, these projects done in the first place. This was a bipartisan effort because everybody knew that America needed these projects. And that means when Donald Trump kills these projects out of spite, everyone in America is worse off. You read in newspapers or history books about other countries, developing countries that sometimes have problems with the rule of law and see infrastructure projects switch on or switch off just because of who's in power and what the politics of the moment are. That is not supposed to be how things work in the United States of America. And you don't have to be a Democrat or Republican to see how that makes our economy worse, the safety of our transportation systems worse, and really makes our whole country worse off.
Senator, this linking, which is, again, a false equivalency thing, but this linking of the funding, this money that's already been dedicated, already been used in terms of allocation, right? The fact that he's linking it, Trump is linking it to, including Transportation Secretary Duffy, to this war on woke, despite its practical impacts, not only on the labor force, but on people's safety. How is this something that is being skewed or trying to be presented in some type of partisan issue?
Yeah, well, look, this is how Donald Trump continues to try to, how he's trying to just muscle his way through right now. I mean, this is something where I keep saying, like, right now, we do not have three functioning branches of government. We have one branch of government that is literally just trying to dominate and take over the other two, making them subservient to him. People like Speaker Johnson are acting more like cabinet officials in the Trump administration rather than leaders of a separate branch of government. And again, these mob boss tactics, this effort to just try to dominate and use the government means to you have political attacks. I'll be honest with you, it's backfiring on him. I was just back in New Jersey. We got a very important governor's race coming up. Yep. And these commuters that Pete's talking about that are concerned about getting into the city for their jobs or getting back home in time to see their kids, they're Republicans, they're Democrats, they're independents. People don't like this type of mob boss tactics where, it's about political retribution. And who is suffering from that? Again, it's the American people. And I think it's going to backfire huge. I think Donald Trump's killing the Republicans' chance to be able to win the governorship because, we need someone clearly that's going to stand up for the people of New Jersey, not someone like Jack Ciattarelli, who's so, he says he can't think of a single thing that he disagrees with Trump on, gives Trump an A rating for his presidency so far. That's not the kind of guy that we need at the helm to take on what we're seeing from these attacks by Trump upon our state.
Secretary Buttigieg, 83% of funding so far has gone to Trump-supporting states during this particular administration. Senator Kim spoke about the billionaire buddies that are benefiting from this. It's a huge divide between America's working class families that are just trying to get by, especially as we hit day 20 of this government shutdown. During your time in the Biden administration, however, there was a very fair, almost to the exact dot of 50% allocation of funding towards, quote, red states or blue states. And I'm loath to use those designations because, to your point, we're all Americans and these projects benefit all of us regardless of party affiliation. But it seems to be a very targeted, very intentional move by this administration to make sure that punishment is the word of the day.
That's right. I mean, when we were evaluating projects that we could support, whether it was fixing up an airport or getting rid of a dangerous railroad crossing or a massive infrastructure project like the Hudson River Tunnel project that President Trump killed now, we didn't sit around saying, how did you vote? We looked at these and said, how can we help? And found that there were deserving projects in places all across America, many of which voted conservative, many of which were liberal, many of which were in between. And that was the whole point. We knew that this whole country needed an infrastructure upgrade, and we insisted that deserving projects get funded. One of the reasons why so many Republican members of Congress who voted against the infrastructure package were still able to try to go take credit for the projects that came to their districts is that we never punished their constituents if they had a good project that they wanted to make the case for. The questions we were asking were questions like, is this going to help with the commute? Is this going to save lives? Is this going to grow the economy? And by the way, the Gateway Project and the Hudson River tunnels obviously met those criteria. That's how they earned this kind of funding. We never sat around contemplating switching off funding or killing good-paying union jobs just because we were mad at a senator or a member of Congress from a certain district or state. And believe me, sometimes we were mad, but we would never hold American jobs or American communities hostage over that.
Senator Kim, both you and Secretary Buttigieg have young children. I have a daughter who's 10 years old, and part of what I do and part of my advocacy focuses on the type of world that we're going to leave for her and for your children, right? And the reason why I pose this question to you is, it's infrastructure, folks. These are things that are supposed to withstand the test of time if they are built well with competent professionals and have the true investment of our government. If there was ever anything that's supposed to be an indication of how healthy a government is the way that we're taking care of our people. That's not just the body politic, but it also includes how are we actually literally providing them with the physical infrastructure to be able to go about living their lives to make everyone's lives better. You mentioned that you're hearing from your constituents, and yeah, maybe it is New York, New Jersey, but to your point and to Secretary Buttigieg's point, it's the entire country that's impacted by these types of weaponizations of infrastructure. Your thoughts about the future of our collective children and those that are tuning in and listening right now when this type of politicization happens?
Yeah, I think about this a lot. My older son just turned 10 years old a couple weeks ago. He's closer to college than he is to birth. And that's terrifying for me. In just a few years, in about another decade, he's off on his own. And that's, when I think about projects like this, the Gateway Tunnel, that's something that will be finished as he's coming into adulthood. It's going to shape his life. It's going to shape the next generation. And I just, when I was back in New Jersey this weekend, so many families really worried. I'll be honest, we worry about what kind of America our kids are growing up in. Yeah. And especially, I tell you, I don't want this kind of chaos and this kind of anxiety right now to just become the new normal. We can't have a situation where our country is just pendulum swinging, based on the partisanship. I think I can speak to a lot of people that we want something more stable for our kids. Something more predictable and something where the American taxpayer dollars are actually going to solve problems, not be used for just whatever Donald Trump wants it. For the amount of money that he's holding back from the Gateway Tunnel, he just throws it at Argentina, for instance, and tells them that, if the elections go the way against the president of Argentina, then, we'll turn the spigot off. Not only is he trying to use mob boss politics at home, he's literally trying to dictate election results around the world. This is just so scary right now. And we just see, our future of our kids really on the line in terms of what we can provide. So yes, as a father, and I'm sure Pete feels the same, like, we're doing this for our kids. We're doing this, try to give them the kind of future they deserve.
Secretary Buttigieg, the thing that is happening in this administration more acutely than it was in the first term for Trump is the group of people I call the enablers. And they run the gamut from the lawyers that are facilitating. It includes cabinet members. It also includes members of Congress, people that have all forgotten to whom they owe and to whom they have sworn an oath, which is the people of the United States of America. As somebody who has served in an administration in a critical role like transportation secretary, I know you're too nice to cast aspersions on a successor like Transportation Secretary Duffy. But I did want to ask you how absolutely dangerous, in every sense of the word, this type of falling into line, this type of loyalist politics that we're seeing, where we don't have people standing up and saying no and saying this type of extortion is going to literally pose a threat to American citizens, how it poses a danger to all of Americans.
Well, truth is, all of us are worse off. Even people who are inside the administration are going to be worse off in the long run as Americans if this sort of cheapening and destructive politics continues. Again, I don't care how you voted, you're definitely going to be worse off if the Hudson tunnels fail before they can be fixed, which is what is more likely to happen now that Donald Trump has killed that project. You are more likely to have a problem with your commute, or for that matter, run into economic issues in a country where we don't have a strong rule of law. And you do see so many people who deep down know better. I know that's true on Capitol Hill among many Republican legislators who in the past made clear what they thought of this sort of thing before they felt that they somehow needed to be on board. But just as Andy was talking about our kids, I think this is another example of the importance of thinking about the long run. I think about the world that my kids, now 4, will grow up into, and how much depends on making sure that we set them up for success with good infrastructure and healthier politics. And I also think about the fact that a day will come when Donald Trump is no longer active in U.S. politics. And when that day comes, a lot of people who are doing this sort of stuff right now will have to explain themselves. They'll have to explain their choices, and they're not going to have a very good case to make that they were doing the right thing in these moments when it mattered most.
I want to say a sincere thank you to the both of you, Senator Kim and Secretary Buttigieg, for having this important conversation. There is so much going on. Everything is a 5-alarm fire, and yet when we don't focus on these type of critical issues, we really lose the opportunity to educate. I like to say knowledge is power, and the more knowledge we can give people so they can come educated about how they vote and how they're looking at these issues and policies, the better off we all are as Americans. So thank you sincerely for taking the time to join me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Katie Phang here. We launched the Katie Phang News Channel in partnership with the Midas Touch Network so we could bring you the latest in legal and political news. Straight, no chaser. So if you're a fellow truth teller, hit that subscribe button and share the word about this channel so we can build a high information America together.